Hey you guys, welcome. We are back on the Boone farm today. We have some Sarah Boone updates when it comes to her appeal. And just an overall update on Sarah Boone to give us our dosage. You know that we have to have our Sarah Boone fix. I was hanging out on the internet, strolling through the internet streets today, and I caught the end of a live by Tanika, and she spilled a lot of tea. So I hung out in the bushes and ate some popcorn and watched the show. I definitely wanted to talk to you all about that alimony and the upcoming appeal. We know Sarah Boone is still at work on her appeal. She still has hope, as she loves to say. She has hope. Although, in my opinion, we can all rest assured that Judge Cranick sealed the deal with her paperwork and her trial every step of the way, making sure that she was okay with her representation. James Owens and Company, for whatever that's worth. We haven't heard from James since the trial, since the appeal was filed. Have we? Leave a comment below. Has anyone heard anything from James Owens? Is he really off in the wind? Back to being a good old boy in Milton, sipping tea with his feet up, enjoying his retirement, watching YouTube videos, hey James, and reflecting on what a superb job he did leading Sarah to her life sentence. Enough about James. We are here for Sarah Boone. Tanika was reading off Sarah's commissary list, and Sarah likes sugar. She ordered like 100 packs of sugar, and the first thing I thought is she's making prison wine. She also ordered like these freezer popsicles, and I don't think she has like a college dorm size refrigerator in her cell, so I'm pretty sure she's using that for like flavor. I saw that when I was watching 60 Days In on A&E. It's like this prison show where regular people go into the prison anonymously and secretly record and talk to inmates, and it's a really cool show. But they were making wine and pies and cakes and candy, and they used a lot of that stuff for flavoring. So I think Sarah's in there mixing up some Boone Farm, making her own Boone Bridge wine. I'm not sure how she does it, but she keeps a large commissary order and money on her books. So her fans, shout out to her fans, they must be taking care of her and keeping her afloat, because the reason we're here today is the alimony. Brian has not been paying, and he is still fighting it, and I believe he'll win. Well, let's say I hope he'll win, because Sarah, she pretty much owes restitution to the court, and I looked it up online, and any income she receives, she has to pay 80% to the court. Remember when Judge Cranick read off her sentencing and he said, court cost, you'll have court cost. Although she's indigent and she doesn't have income, she still has to pay a restitution for her crime, and it'll, no matter how long it takes. So in essence, if Brian has to pay alimony, he will be paying her restitution cost, and I don't think that would be fair for him, because he has to be a dad first and foremost and take care of himself.
Are you satisfied with your attorneys so far throughout this trial?
Definitely.
And are you on board with the strategy that they've employed so far in this trial?
Definitely.
All right, thank you very much.
And with Sarah being a ward of the court, all of her needs are pretty much met. She would just use the alimony for extra perks. Meanwhile, Brian is in the real world, and eventually Sarah is going to have to come to grips with the fact that the alimony is gone. It's over. Brian is her last link to the real world, other than a few friends or fans that she has. But Brian is like her own family, like she said, because her brother, I don't know if he's incarcerated, but he had problems with drugs. And her other brother, if he's in the military, I'm quite sure he probably can write her, but Brian is her only lifeline. Their son is almost grown now, so at this point, Brian doesn't even have to talk to Sarah. And actually, according to the call logs, Sarah calls numerous times, and Brian or their son, neither of them, they don't answer the phone. I think they're pretty much over the Sarah Boone circus. And Brian is, I'm sure, regretting that she's still carrying his last name. I wonder if he can maybe pay her off to go back to Paulson. Maybe in the alimony request, he can offer her a tiny lump sum to go back to Paulson and be rid of her. No more Sarah Boone. Back to Sarah Paulson. Even though the damage is already done, she'll forever be Sarah Boone to all of us. A cold, calculated, baby-voiced murderer. And speaking of calculated, the appeal. Let's get to the appeal. So, Josh Adams emailed Tanika today. Tanika is so awesome. She has been on top of this whole appeal situation. If I remember correctly, it was her that got the ball rolling on where Sarah's appeal was in the first place. Like, it was missing, and Tanika got the ball rolling. So, like, she's so awesome for that. So, Josh Adams, he emailed Tanika, and he informed her that he's waiting for transcripts, and he's going to request an extension for her appeal. Looking at the paperwork, Josh is banking on a few things for an appeal, but again, Judge Krennic, he made everything airtight, but Josh is banking on one thing that had some of us worried, and that is the September 3rd continuance request. When James first got the case and requested a continuance, and Judge Owens had already made a 16-page letter to Sarah and to the court and let everyone know that there was going to be no more extensions. Sarah had used her last get out of jail free card. There would be no more passing go. You have no more money in the bank, Sarah. It is time to play the game with what you have. At that point on September 3rd, the entire court building was tired of Sarah. Even the escort with the pink handcuffs, she was even tired of Sarah, like wanting her to braid her hair or something like that. Everyone was so tired of Sarah, the judge refused to give James a continuance. So he was working with limited time. However, he knew that when he was at home watching from Milton on his porch with his feet kicked up on his tablet. He knew that there was a limited amount of time. So he didn't have his ducks in a row. Know that.
So we did make attempts, like everybody does. Prosecutor, any criminal defense lawyer, public defender, you have plea negotiations. So there were attempts to settle it. I was kind of like a mediator.
Regarding the plea offer, it's not just 15 years in the Department of Corrections. That is an offer predicated on a particular circumstance. Coming to court and saying, I am responsible for George Torres's death, and I accept the punishment. And because that consideration was never given in this case, the offer of 15 years in no way represents what this case is worth, or what George Torres's life is worth.
Court pronounces sentence as follows. Ms. Boone, court sentences you to life in the Department of Corrections, with credit time served that Madam Clerk will provide to you momentarily. There are also court costs and costs of prosecution, which Madam Clerk will give you the totals of.
For some strange reason, Sarah sat there in all of her gold and glory, forgiving everyone except for herself. She played games all the way until the very end, and Judge Cranick was having none of it. Now she is behind bars, under the jail, making prison wine, and hoping that the appeals attorney, Josh, will be able to comb through the transcripts and find a mistake. She's hoping that on her final chance, she'll get off on a technicality. Yep, a technicality. That's where we are, people. Sarah is hoping for a technicality when she could have been home in about 8 years. Do you think Sarah is finally kicking herself in the butt for rejecting that sweetheart deal? Or at this point, is Josh shooting in the dark? There was also a request for transcripts for jury selection. That was pretty interesting. That would be an angle that I'm curious about. Maybe Sarah believes there was some prejudice in the jury pool. But if I remember correctly, James actually handpicked the jurors himself, and even in his closing argument, he spoke to the jurors like they were his friends.
Ma'am, you told me last week that you were ready for trial, or are you ready for trial today?
I am.
Okay.
If juror number 3 could have gotten on the podium and grabbed the gavel out of Judge Cranick's hand and banged it himself, I think he would have done that. If you remember one of our previous episodes, juror number 3 scared Sarah when he said guilty. He was so ready to sentence her after seeing all of her documentation. He startled her. She was taken aback. Unless Josh can find something in the transcripts with those 3 things, the continuance, the statement, and jury selection, that's finally it, and Sarah will be under the jail. Let's be honest, at this point, if Sarah was granted an appeal, her new trial could be worse than her previous trial. There was a lot of evidence not allowed during this trial, but on appeal, on a new trial, a lot of evidence can be brought in that would not look good for Sarah. Or the fact that she could have actually premeditated this whole thing. There's a lot of evidence showing that Sarah had plans on getting rid of George before that fateful night. She hinted around at it, she texted, she told his family members and told him as well. Even on Christmas Day, texting his family saying that she'll get rid of him and she'll be better after that. So that can be taken as premeditated, and in my opinion, the results will be the same. Guilty, life. It seems like Sarah likes to gamble. I don't think the judicial system is the place to bet your life. But Sarah has one more chance at an appeal, and we definitely will be looking at every turn. Know that. Let's go over some of Sarah's letters to Judge Dean in divorce court, just to see the level of entitlement as Sarah makes demands. She really intended on weaponizing the judicial system against Brian as well, which is probably why he had reservations on going to court for custody of their son, because she is very good at manipulating the system. Well, she was very good at manipulating the system. So let's look at this letter from Sarah Boone to Judge Dean, and get your popcorn because it gets a little spicy. Judge Michael Dean, in all my attempts, 16 plus, to protect myself and help from the still ongoing hate, lies, slander, degradation, cruelty, and active abuse from former husband, Brian C. Boone, nothing has improved, made better, corrected, relieved in any way for myself, the respondent, from former husband, the court, or judge. I have tried everything. I have made innumerable requests and sent many letters asking for aid from all with no success or assistance, listening or care by anyone other than myself, trying to relieve or altogether stop his inappropriateness, bitterness, anger, and wrongdoing. Please see lists below of my letters sent to you in court per the Records Management Division of the Clerk of Courts, when for the third time tried getting a copy of my active dissolution of marriage agreement. I cannot have because they are wanting payment in order to receive, and I am in jail. I also have no bank account after the one I had was closed after having for 30 years due to non-payment of alimony from former husband, as stated in prior letters. It is appalling how uninterested, uncaring, and nonchalant you and the justice system are about my side in any of this, and will not listen without the right paperwork and attorney, knowing I am actively being taken advantage of and wrongfully mistreated by former husband Brian Boone. Sarah, you're a killer. That's why I'm not doing anything. Former husband said in front of son on phone, "You are not important to anyone." Former husband, numerous dates. "You are not a priority." Former husband, numerous dates. "Dad says you're annoying and beg all the time." Son told me after asking him to ask former husband if he finally ordered a book in Hotmail after being made to call to check for 13 weeks. What Sarah fails to realize is everything that Brian just said is actually true, from her being a killer to her not being important anymore or a priority. His priority is now their son. And I don't believe anything that she says about their son, so we will leave him totally out of it. We know that she will weaponize him. "Oh, I have to get back home to my son. He's so happy that I'm here." She'll weaponize him at any moment. After she put it on his life that she didn't do anything to George, we already knew where her level of morals were. "I lie to you because I can. Dad does all the time." Son, you make no difference in our lives. Former husband, numerous dates. 9/14/23, recent. I guess she does have nothing but time on her hands, but to sit there and write the dates of every insult you get is just next level. Why aren't you, as my judge, doing anything to hear, understand both sides? What else needs to be done to me by former husband in order for you to help me? What else can I do to have not done already for any relief on my side? Stop enabling. Judicially, you must know this is wrong and how I am being treated. I am told every time when trying to reduce any anguish or mistreatment from the former husband and cooperate trying to help. The judge doesn't care what you write. My son says the same when I correct him on how he is being mean and rude to me. He's never going to do anything for you until your trial is over. And even then, it will still be in my favor. My other document is ready to go, so I can take the rest. I have an attorney. You deserve nothing. You mean nothing. Then former husband gets his precious attorney to file another answer denying allegations because I'm telling the truth all the time about his awful lies and I am right. Judge Dean, so I have to continue taking former husband's abuse, neglect, unlawful actions, cruel comments, and hate until my trial, if and when it happens? Oh, Sarah, it's happening. However long that will be, now considering my attorney has withdrawn from my case and no date of trial is known or will be known for an undetermined amount of time. Sarah knew what type of game she was playing. She thought that she was going to delay and delay and delay until the case just magically went away. She really thought that she was going to play the system and play herself at the same time, unfortunately. And if she really cares about her son like she says, she ruined any chance at reconciling and being with him one day. How much more hate and disrespect will former husband encourage my son to keep lying and overall being mean to me as his mother? Former husband is treating and reflecting a terrible example of how women can and should be treated. Nonetheless, the mother of his child. This is egregious and wrong. Please read my prior motion for case management hearing I sent 6/28/23 with no response to date. I am requesting again, please, to schedule. It is fair and there are too many topics to be discussed, including my attorney to write, and I only have one pen. Necessary, lawful, active. Important topics. What is the certified notice of delinquent support filed? Please grant my motions and schedule my imperative, overdue, owed meeting. Everyone needs and must have the same understanding now and future. It is fair. What else can I do? What's left except for begging, which former husband says I do all the time? What am I doing wrong in order to be treated rightfully, properly, ethically correct in order to finally receive your judicial assistance? How I am and have been and will be treated by former husband Brian C. Boone is unfair, malicious, and wrong, and should not be in any way allowed to continue. Stop. Please see. Please listen. Please help. Judge Dean, what was the reason for your comment made in your courtroom about former husband violating my constitutional rights? If you're not going to uphold or help said rights and lawfully allow me to use, what's the point? Why do I even have? You know I do, in order for you to remark and see they are being violated. 9/19/22. Because of course she documents everything. Please schedule. It is my right. It is fair. Sincerely, Sarah Boone. Please send a copy of this letter so I know it was received and will serve as my receipt. Know that. And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Sarah Boone. I know Brian is just steaming and fuming, wishing that she would change her name back to Paulson. I think that's her final nail in the coffin to Brian, just keeping his last name and tormenting him until their son is of age, and then she has no reason. Even then, if they have grandchildren, she'll have a reason to call him. She's going to always find a reason to call Brian Boone. Someone call Brian, please. Do you think Sarah has learned anything? Even though this letter is not new, it shows a pattern of her behavior. She documents everything. She's such a know-it-all, and she really doesn't have the knowledge that she thinks she does. She's literally in a prison cell speaking to a judge like she's the one on a podium. Like, she is the one in the black robe. She's speaking from a soapbox in a prison cell. And she's actually making demands. And please send me a copy of this letter so it serves as my receipt. Sarah is going to have a very rude awakening in the next few years, especially when she realizes that there's no appeal, that the appeal is over. That is going to be the next stage of her acceptance. Or comment below if you think there's a scintilla of a chance that she can get an appeal and a whole new trial. One thing that stood out to me in this letter is that she continually accused Brian of reducing her to begging, when in reality it's her choice. She does not have to call Brian for anything. She positions herself as a victim, and maybe that's what she was doing for the last 20 years of their relationship. And he was caught in a cycle. He was in the clutches of Sarah Boone, to the point even when she started a new relationship, he actually facilitated the relationship. To boot, he even facilitated that evening the bottles of wine, the handles that they got. She called him and told him, hey, my account is in the red. I need some money. And she in turn took that money to Publix. And Sarah would still have us believe that George forced her to drink, to the point that he hit her with the bottom and blacked her eyes and poured the liquor down her throat. He forced her to drink. She did not want to drink. She did not drink. She hated to drink. But the proof is in the pudding. I saw an interview on another channel from her former cellmate or former inmate that was locked up with her, and they said that she's really favorable with the guards in there. Even though she's getting acclimated into her new high-ranking prison murder status, she has favor with the guards, and I'm pretty sure that's because she is malicious and she's manipulative, allegedly. If Sarah Boone did not get what she wanted, it was going to be hell to pay. We saw that in the interrogation when she was willing to stand up against Scott, the detective, who was triple her size at the time. And we saw that with her and George, even with his family, even with the judges. We saw that with all of the attorneys. She made unreasonable demands, called them excessively, was considerably unreasonable with bending on her defense. There were times if Sarah didn't get what she wanted, she would start berating her own attorney. She made it to the point where they would have to eliminate themselves from the case totally. Even the attorneys that wanted to help her, that truly wanted to give her a chance, because every defense attorney is not a scumbag. Some people really want their clients to get rehabilitated, and even James Owens, we joke about James all the time, but he really wanted to come in and make a deal for Sarah and just go on back home to Milton and watch YouTube. He had no idea that he was in for a roller coaster ride like he was. Sarah knew. You can tell from the letters, she planned on holding up the courts and playing with the system, but she had ran out of rope. When she met Judge Cranick, he was a man of little words, as we saw at the sentencing. However, he watched very closely, and that jury made the decision and he enforced it. And now she wants a round 10 to redeem herself. She's going to be very surprised to find out at her appeal hearing she won't be escorted out of the jail and given a nice new suit or blotchy shirt. She's going to maybe attend via Zoom, like some of the prisoners we see on YouTube, she'll be on Zoom if she is even in attendance, because appeal is way different than trial. But I must admit, I would love to see old Sarah Boone on Zoom camera at court. Judging from the last photos we got of Sarah, she looked like a completely different person. Gone was that little scrawny, mousy, baby voiced, erratic person from Tillwood Apartments. A hardened criminal has entered the chat. Sarah looked completely differently. So I would love to see some updated pictures or videos of Sarah just to see how she's doing and what she's up to behind bars at Lowell. Until then, we will meet in the comment section. Leave me any suggestions or thoughts, and thank you so much for tuning in. Big hugs and kisses. Talk to you soon.